Okay, now for our next lesson. Today we're going to actually combine two lessons together, and it's about the same thing, so that's why we're doing that. So go to your table of contents, put today's date, page 29. We may use multiple pages today. Multiply decimals. And then go to page 29. Remember, pause this if you need more time, but I'm going to continue on. All right, so here's the heading. 3-3, Chapter 3, Lesson 3, Chapter 3, Lesson 4. It's multiplying decimals by a whole number, which follows this workbook page, 193 to 200, and multiplying decimals, which follows workbook page 201 to 210. So because we're talking about multiplying decimals, let's talk about some key words that are going to represent multiplying. When you see them in a word problem, what they mean is to multiply. So first of all, you know multiply, right? Times. You guys see that? How many times? Now, I love this next little word, of. If you see the word of in math, it means to. I'm going to really circle that one. I love that little word. And the other one that you'll see a lot is product. The product is the answer to a multiplication problem. So product would be another key word that you would use that would represent multiply. Other words that you might see, if they say double or twice the amount, what are you multiplying by? You're multiplying by 2. And we can continue on. If I triple something, that means times 3. Quadruple means times 4, etc. But this is a pretty good list. And when you're working on word problems, I want you guys to underline those keywords and then put what the sign is that you're going to be working on. All right. So let's talk about multiplying decimals. And let's talk about the rules for multiplying decimals. Do lots of practice with it. I also want to talk about special cases today of multiplying with decimals by 10, by 100, by 1,000. So we have a lot to do today. So let's talk about multiplying decimals and get some good notes in here. All right. So when you're multiplying decimals, do not, let's put this in red. Do not line up the decimal point. Do not line up the decimal point. Jeremy, do not line up the decimal point. You're not going to line up the decimal point. If you learned it that way, really, I don't want you to do that because you don't have to. Then you end up with all these extra zeros. So what you're going to do is you're going to multiply as normal, like you would any multi-digit number. So you're going to multiply as normal. And then once you're done multiplying, okay, after you multiply as normal, what you're going to do is you're going to count the number of digits. So you're going to count the number of digits after, let's underline that word, after, I'm going to use color, after the decimal point. Decimal point or decimal points. You may have 2. Just put that in parentheses. Okay? And then what you're going to do, and I'm going to show you, I want you underlining it. If you notice, I like to use a lot of color, I like to use a lot of graphics because I think that's a good visual to help you learn. So then what you're going to do is after you count the number of digits, you're going to move the decimal point that number of spaces, whatever that number of spaces are, to the left, starting at the end of the number. Starting at the end of the number. Now remember, pause this if you need more time. Your teacher will do that for you. But as you know, I'll continue on, and then once you're ready, we'll continue. So, overview. When we're multiplying decimals, we're not going to line up the decimal point. Do not line up the decimal point. You're going to multiply as you would normally. Remember, the one that has the most digits you always want to put on the top when you're multiplying. You're going to count the number of digits after the decimal point. You're going to see, I'm going to ask you to underline them. Let's put that in here. Underline. And you'll see what I mean as soon as I do that. I want you to underline the digits, and then you're going to move the decimal point, the number of spaces, to the left starting at the end of the number. All right. So once you're ready, let's do some examples. Your teacher will unpause it as soon as you're ready. All right, let's do some examples. Now, the first one I'd like to try is 4 times 83/100ths. I want to take the product of that. All right, so now do you guys notice you have 4 and you have one digit here, you have 2 digits here? Well, if you were to set this up, wouldn't you put, if this were just 83, wouldn't you put the 83 on top and then do the multiplying? You do the same thing. Okay, so you're going to multiply as you would normal. So ignore the decimal point. So you're going to do 3 times 4 is 12, carry the 1. 4 times 8 is 32, plus 1 is 33. So we multiplied as normal. Now, let's read what it says. Count the number of digits after the decimal points. Underline it. Meaning, all right, so here's a decimal point. I'm going to underline it, right? I have 2 digits there, right? Do I have a decimal point here? No. So I don't have any here, so that means I'm going to move it 2 spaces starting at the end of the number left. So I like to call it swooping. So you start here. Swoop once, swoop twice. So our answer is 3 32/100ths. That's our answer. We'll continue to do more, so don't worry. All right, let's try another one. Example 2. Example 2 is 3 times 14 2/10. Why don't you pause the video and try that yourself? Then when you're ready, we'll start. All right, let's begin. All right, now, this has 1 digit. This has 3 digits. So I'm going to put that 14 2/10 on the top times 3. All right, ignore the decimal point. Remember, follow your steps. Multiply as normal. Don't line up the decimal point. You're going to multiply as normal. 2 times 3 is 6. 3 times 4 is 12. Carry the 1. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4. Next step, count the number of digits after the decimal point. So there's only 1 here. There's none here, so I'm going to move it 1 space left. So start here, swoop it once, and our answer is 42 6/10. Getting better at it? There we go. Sorry. All right, now I'm going to go to the back. Do some more. All right, now this time, the example that I want to do is going to have decimals in both numbers. So again, it's going to be the same thing. So 3 6/10 times, let's multiply it by 5/100ths. Now notice they both have 2 digits. So just set it up. Do not line up the decimal point. And here we go. So 6 times 5 is 30, carry the 3. 5 times 3 is 15, plus 3 is 18. All right, now this is where you have to remember. Now, I know that in elementary school they probably told you to put a 0. I like to do an X, and I'm going to tell you why I like to use an X versus a 0. Because that tells me that I've moved it. So if I'm going to this next digit, I'm going to move it once. If I had another number here, and I was using that last number here, I'd move it over twice, here and here. And that way I can visually see that I've moved it over. So if you prefer to use zeros, you certainly can, but this is a good way for you to know that you moved it over. All right, so now 0 times 6 is 0. 0 times 3 is 0. You add 0, 8, 1. Now this is where we count the number of digits after each decimal point. After, underline them. 1 here, 2, 3. So you can just count them. 1, 2, 3. So you have to move it a total of 3 spaces to the left. So start here. Swoop it once, swoop it twice, swoop it 3 times. So it looks like our answer is 180 thousandths. All right. So that's it for how we're going to multiply decimals. What I'd next like to talk about are some special cases. And some special cases in this case is how do we multiply when we have a power of 10. Let's write that. Because believe it or not, there's some shortcuts in math that will help you make your math easier. This is one of them. So multiply by a power of 10. And when I'm talking about a power of 10, I'm talking about multiplying it by 10, by 100, by 1,000. Because you'll see later on, this is really 10 to the first power. This is 10 to the second power. This is 10 to the third power. So I'm going to show you that there's an easy way when you're multiplying by a power of 10. And I'm going to box that in because this is pretty cool the way that this works, right? All right. So what I'm going to do, and you can write with me, is I'm going to do the multiplying, and I want to see if you notice what's happening. Okay, so let's do 101 and 24 hundredths times 1, 1 and 24 hundredths times 10, 1 and 24 hundredths times 100, 1 and 24 hundredths times 1,000, 1 and 24 hundredths times, let's say 10,000. And I think that's enough because I think you'll get my point. Okay, so you ready? All right, so the answer to this, if you multiply it by 1, it's just 1 and 24 hundredths. Now I'm going to write the answer to this, and you're going to tell me, I'm going to write all the answers, and you're going to tell me what do you notice. So here are the answers. And I want you to take a moment and look at it. If you have to pause the video, you do that. All right. So, when you are multiplying by a power of 10, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, anybody notice what happened with the decimal point? So, when you're multiplying by a power of 10, the decimal point is going to move to the right based upon the numbers or the power. So, let's write that. So, this is what I mean by that, and then we'll write it. All right, so you multiply by 1, right? You multiply by 10. Do you guys notice it just moved the decimal point one space? So there was 1 0 here. I moved it one space. Now look, I have 2 zeros here. So the original number was here once, twice. I moved it twice and became 124. Right? Now look, 1, 2, 3. So wherever the decimal was right here, it was right here originally. 1, 2, 3. So it became 1,240. Look at 1, 2, 3, 4. So start here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pretty cool, right? So let's get that in writing so you understand that. And I'll do one other example and then we'll have to stop because the video will run out of time. So what you do is when multiplying by a power of 10, comma, you're going to move the decimal point to the right meaning this way. Let's draw it to the right if you're not sure left and right, based upon the number of zeros, or it could be whatever your exponent or power is, whatever your power or exponent is. Okay, I'll do one more quick example to show you what I mean. All right, so let's say I gave you, let's say 50 and 1/10. Well, let's do 50 and 123 thousandths. And I want you to multiply it by 100. All right, let's see if we can apply the rule, right? So I start with the original number, 50, here we go, 50123, right? I started here. This is where now look, 2 zeros. So I'm going to move it once, twice. So I move it right twice. Move right twice. So my answer is 5,012 3/10. And that's how you multiply by power of 10. So I'm done today. Your teacher will probably do extra problems with you. Good luck.